Hello, friends. Uncle Marv here, and welcome to another episode of the IT Business Podcast, the show for IT professionals, managed service providers, where we help you run your business better, smarter, and faster. We're coming at you from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, folks, and today we're going to dig into some tools, tips, and tactics all related to the stack. So we are in the midst of conference season, and if you show up to a show, you are going to be presented and in some cases hounded with products that are supposed to be better for you, cheaper for you. And I've been sitting on some information that I think it's time to share. And I brought a good friend onto the show who I think will be a good complement to my side of the story, Tom Wyant, Wyant Technologies. Tom, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am good, sir. So when I presented this topic to you, what was your first thought?
I've recently been through this, so I have thoughts. I have experience. I don't have concrete numbers, but I have experience.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. I mean, the thing that blows my mind is I see guys in the Facebook forums or the Facebook pages for MSP stuff who are changing every year or two.
Yeah.
That, I don't understand that.
Well, that's part of why this came up. So I've known people that have gone through, they want to change something every year, and usually it's based on price. They want to save some money. And there are other times where what they have just isn't working. And then, of course, we always know every year, shiny object syndrome. You're going to see something new and it's like, ooh, I think I need that, without even checking to see if you really do need that. So
it's hard to say no at times because, it does this, it does. And I'm guilty of this. I've gotten way better. I've gotten older and hopefully more mature, so I don't do it as often.
Right.
But I've got a couple in the last couple of years that I have migrated onto them and off of them. And that's part of my I've learned situation now.
Wow.
I hope.
Okay. So let me start the conversation by doing a couple of housekeeping things. First, I want to let the listeners know, I am actually going to be referencing a couple of situations that I've gone through personally. So you're going to hear some real scenarios from me. I'm going to ask Tom a lot of the same things. I'm also referencing some articles, and the big article that I'm referencing is actually from September of last year. The title's a little deceiving. It talks about why your MSP renewal just got more expensive, and then it talks about the cost of switching. And basically, I had this idea in my head about the hidden cost of changing your stack. Every year, and I would say actually more than every year, it's like several times a year, I get presented with a vendor that comes to me and says, hey, what are you using? We can, do this. We can provide this. We can save you money here. And over the years, if you've heard me on my show, I've always talked about, I have my stack. It works. I'm not going to change. But I've never probably described how I got there. And a lot of how I got there is a couple of things. One, I have heard the horror stories of people making a change and it didn't exactly pan out the way they thought it would, or it didn't meet the expectations that the salesperson told them. And then they, have to, rip it out and either go back to the previous product or find something new. And I always found that interesting because I'm like, man, the amount of time and effort it takes alone would stop me from making a change that is rash and all of that. So, Tom, let me get your thoughts on that. I've mentioned that, let me go ahead and do this. Everybody always asks me, what I'm using. I try not to tell the vendors when they call but I have said it on here, and I said it last week when I was at the Empower conference. I'm with Enable.
Mm-hmm.
I started actually with GFI. GFI got purchased by Enable.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't know any better. I'm like, okay, well, as long as they don't change the product, I'm okay.
Yep.
For me, Enable works because it's got my RMM, it's got integrated AV, it's got integrated web filtering or DNS, it's got integrated backup. And for me, that's the bulk of my tool. Now, there's other stuff that I add on, but in terms of the basics, which I think those are always the basics we start with, they're there, they're integrated, they work. I'm not changing. And anytime I've looked to change, it's always been a comparison of, okay, if I go to one of these other packages, they have RMM, but they don't have AV or they don't have the DNS filtering. And once I look to add those back on, the price is almost the same.
Yep.
So that's one reason why I've always stayed. So from what I've said so far, Tom, give me your thoughts.
I agree with you. We went we started the company in 2003. In 2009 we went to ConnectWise. 2011 we went to LabTech. 2016 we went to Continuum, still on ConnectWise Manage. Continuum was bought by ConnectWise. So we had 2 RMM changes, and the differences were pretty big. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that Continuum did that, unless I wanted to have a dedicated resource for LabTech, it didn't do. At least out of the box, they had some stuff. But from there, we went to Halo Ninja, and the base package does the same stuff. We saved some money moving to Halo and Ninja. But when you start looking at all of the other things, so I'm looking at tools right now, between the DNS and everything else, I could save a few cents here and there. I could do a bunch of other things. It's got to the point for me where I don't know if it's really worth changing, or if I'm better off riding the vendor to get the features I need either fixed or added, because I'm not saving much, if anything, or I'm spending more. Why? And after going through an RMM and PSA switch 2 years ago, I really hope that I can retire before I ever have to think about that again. And that's 10 years out. It was challenging.
Yeah. Can I ask, when you did make those changes, do you remember the reason why you made each of those changes?
I was a huge fan of ConnectWise when Arnie and David were running the company. The great people, I could get things fixed. Wonderful. Sold out to private equity. Service took a nosedive right off the bat. It came back, but it just wasn't the same company. We ended up having all of the security stack. We were a cybersecurity partner. We had a bunch of billing issues with Perch. Perch was sold a certain way and then ended up they changed something in the billing and it changed the billing. We got a big refund, which was nice, but I'm giving them money every month for stuff we're not supposed to be giving them. And then they could turn around and give me a refund. I don't even get, interest or whatever. It's like the government, getting a tax return. It was one of those things where the stuff that I wanted to do in ConnectWise is, if you want to do it the ConnectWise way, it works. I wanted to make a change to the way we do some stuff. Started talking to people, discovered Halo, got into Halo, started looking around. They actually gave us a bunch of months free so I could decide. And so I looked at it, did a demo, figured some things out. Same thing with Ninja. Looked at them, figured out what they would do different than ConnectWise RMM, and thought, okay, I'm going to save. I actually have a spreadsheet. Where's my spreadsheet at? Just in third-party tools, because it's built into Halo, I'm saving $11.44 a month because I got rid of quoting, CSAT, scheduling, like text scheduling, and portal, client portal.
Okay.
So and some reporting.
And that makes sense. I mean, you're saving 1,100.
Yep.
Okay.
The I got lucky. We own our ConnectWise licenses because we went live in 2009. We've always been in house. I have a server in the other room runs SQL and ConnectWise. We did not migrate any history at all. No ticket history, no nothing. It's all in ConnectWise. I can still log into ConnectWise even though our support has shut off. It's not available to the internet. It's all safe. I don't know if I would have wanted to do it if I had to migrate from the cloud over, because that would have been a huge lift. Because, I mean, 15 years worth of data from ConnectWise would have been a nightmare. If we would have had two, I would have moved it.
Yeah.
But we saved enough money. I mean, I think when I had it all figured out, the cost difference between Halo and ConnectWise was not much different. I saved some money on Ninja, and I think I got some more features than I had in CWRMM, which now it's probably the same. They've added stuff in CW. But there's so much stuff I can do in Halo differently than ConnectWise. I can customize it to work the way I want to work. And that to me was the kicker. It's like, okay, I can do this. I'm going to go.
So you brought up a point here that I had under the talking points, data ownership and documentation.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually one of the first things that we should look at is, can we move what we have now? When you talk about the history of your endpoints in terms of, inventory, history, things that have been, if you have a ticketing system, can that ticket information move over? The documentation, all of those things, I have heard where people just literally start over. And that, I don't know if I could do that.
I don't like the idea of starting over. When we switched May 1st of 2024, I logged in, I cut over the email boxes for tickets, and we went. We spent probably 3 months going back to tickets and ConnectWise and looking at what was going on, things we were in process of that we had to close out. After that, I don't think we've really looked in ConnectWise.
Okay.
I've looked in there for opportunities. I've looked in there for agreements, but I'm down to the point where I do it once every 6 months now. And probably the first 6 months I was in there a lot. And after that, once every 6 months. I logged in a couple days ago to look up when we sold something. And that was just because of the fact that they asked. And I didn't remember.
Right.
The thing that scares me the most about, because now we're in Halo and Halo's cloud-based and we're not doing it on-prem, if anything ever happens and we decide to move, how am I going to get all that data? And then the second question is, do I care? As long as everything's running, I kind of look at this as do I really need all the history? I want the history of the opportunities and sales and stuff like that. I'm not sure I need the interest or the history from like Ninja. But the day that I don't have it, I'm sure somebody's going to knock on my door and say, what happened to this PC on this date? And that's what scares me.
Yeah. Yeah. I look at my documentation. I'm using IT Glue. And outside of the configurations, the passwords and stuff, no, I run a monthly run book. So I have the bulk of it, but I don't have all of the things like the checklist that I've uploaded. I don't have the supporting documentations and PDFs and stuff. Now, granted, I have a secondary, storage server where I do have all that stuff. It's just not neatly organized and stuff. So there would be a little downtime. But I'm talking with a customer now that's looking at a new case management system. And one of the things that I had to remind them of last week at the meeting, because in their mind, they thought, well, we'll switch to the new program. We can get rid of the servers and we'll be good. I'm like, no, you can't. Because you only talked about migrating new cases or open cases. What about all those old cases that you need to look at? What about the onboarding time? Because in this world, in the legal world, the size of my client, their onboarding is going to be 6 to 9 months minimum.
Yep.
which means they have to have both systems up and running.
Yep.
And then we're going to have to keep that old system running. I said, we're going to, you're going to have those servers at least a couple of years. So you didn't you didn't erase that cost. So I think that's the same way we have to look at stuff. You mentioned wanting to go back and look for opportunities. The fact that we might have to go back and look for documentation, because if we can't export that out, it's got to be there for us. So you might be paying for two tools.
Yep.
For a period of time.
We did this a couple of years ago. We moved from IT Glue to Hoodoo, and I got lucky at the time where we could export all of our stuff out of IT Glue and import it. It was not perfect. The import was not perfect. There's a lot of stuff in Hoodoo that, as we see it, we clean it out just because it imported a lot of garbage. It was an interesting transition. It didn't take us long. I think it took me a couple days to get all the scripting done and export and script it in. But I got lucky because of the fact that I told it to export the passwords, things like that. So I got lucky. I got lucky with ConnectWise. If I had to start over and not have any of this stuff, it would be a challenge. We would have some issues.
Right.
I can't imagine case management software. And I wonder how much of this is, we could just move you over. How much of this is a sales thing where, we can just move you over and you'll be fine. What does that mean? I mean, what are we moving over? Are we exporting everything from here and putting it into here? Is there even a migration path for this? That's what there are so many questions I have when I talk to people. I talk to clients about this. Oh, we're going to move to this system. How? And who's telling you can do it?
Right. And who's going to hold my hand through the process to make sure that if we hit that snag, we can put the pause on everything and make sure it's working before we continue on? Because just like my law firms, I've been through those migrations. They just push through and they tell you, we'll fix that at the end. We'll fix that at the end. And then the end comes and you're stuck.
Yep.
So very interesting there.
Yeah.
You mentioned your costs and everything, and to go back to that article, so the article references that the average cost of switching for large MSPs, and I'm going to specify that, large MSPs, was estimated to average around $325,000. Now, I kind of went through my scenario, and I'm going to use round numbers to give everybody, an idea. So let's say a smaller MSP, my size, you're averaging 500 endpoints. And your labor cost is $53 an hour. Even if you're averaging 1 hour per endpoint with preparation, onboarding, migrating, training, all of that stuff, it's going to take you a good number of times. 500 endpoints at $53 is $26,500. Are you billing that back to the client?
No,
No,
not at all. We automated a lot of our migration. When we went from lab tech, and I won't call it automate because old school. When we went from lab tech to CWRMM, we scripted it through lab tech. When we went from CWRMM to Ninja, we scripted it through CWRMM. It saved us a lot of time, but there was still a lot of cleanup.
Right.
So, and I think the last time we migrated, we were around, I want to say 700 to 800 endpoints, and now we're over 1,000. So it took us a good month to go through and clean everything up. So I had a tech probably doing 2 to 3 hours worth of work a day just cleaning this stuff up for a month. So then I've lost them off of the help desk or projects or something, and it gets expensive. They're looking here. They're looking at I'm at the time I was a small MSP, so $33,000 to $52,000 in switching costs. I'm betting with training, and we didn't really have any downtime. We just had a lot of tool confusion. We probably put 30 to 40 grand into moving. And there's the thing we were talking about earlier, after data ownership, client facing disruption. We had client facing disruption because of the fact that we moved the client portal.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, my clients have to reload or relearn how to log in. Now, the fun part of this is we switched payment processors late last year, and that's another one. All of a sudden, they've got to log into a different site, and there's confusion, and we're getting checks again, which is more work because we got to go to the bank. And yeah, I get it. It's never cheap to switch. There's got to be a good reason.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the payment thought because our clients have paid the same way forever. I mean, again, these are all things I started with back in the day. I'm still a QuickBooks desktop user.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grandfathered in for as long as they accept those annual renewal subscriptions for the desktop,
Nice.
Which, I'll be honest, it's getting a little frustrating and painful because they raised it again.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think we're paying over $2,000 a year.
Yep.
And that's just QuickBooks. I also do payroll through there.
Oh, wow.
I also do my merchant services through there.
Yeah.
So that's where my customers pay. And yeah, to switch that would cost them. Now that brings up another point, client disruption.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for the most part, most of what we do can be done behind the scenes because we're just changing out agents and stuff. But you mentioned the client-facing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I have juniors at some clients with co-manage. I'd have to not only retrain, my subs, I got to retrain junior.
Yep.
It's
hey, I'm going to switch this tool because it looks good and it's cheaper and blah, blah, blah. And there's all of this stuff that's got to go into that. When we switched to Halo, we were on Cloud Radio. Cloud Radio is a great product. It didn't interface with Halo, and I didn't need it because Halo's got a built-in client portal. It took me 6 months to get everybody into the client portal. When we switched from Wise Pay to Benji Pays, it probably took us 6 months to get everybody into to figure out where everything was. Now, in my opinion, Benji Pays works out easier because it's integrated with the Halo portal, but it's still a confusing thing for the end users because the end users might log in once a month. They're not retaining, hey, this is what you do. I can walk through it with them. But if they don't do it, every week, the next month they're like, how did I do this again?
Yeah. That is true. So we've talked about a couple of the client-facing things. Do you tell clients when you switch stuff? I mean, outside of the stuff they see.
Major.
Okay.
Halo, yes. Benji Pays, yes. Everything on the back end, backups, EDR, MDR, SOC, SIEM, we don't really talk about unless it's I have one client who is semi co-managed, semi not co-managed. I mean, we take care of everything except they have an IT director. We talk about it because he is technical. And I'll say, hey, we're doing this, or we're looking at this, or we're going to change this, and this is why. And he's like, okay, cool. Everybody else, as long as it works, my impression when I try to talk to it or talk about it with them is, yeah, we don't care as long as it works.
Right. So for years, I never thought I would have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
But now, when I think back over the last few years, things I have done, they would notice if a change was made. The first big thing was remote access.
Mm-hmm.
When we started closing up, Naked RDP, we were doing Sonic Wall VPN. And then we had to move them to TrueGrid. So obviously you have to tell the customer. I implemented Defendify as my cybersecurity platform. So that's what we're doing our security awareness training with. We're checking, their domain reports. We're scanning. We're doing compromised password scanning. Their training videos, they recognize those all as Defendify because that's who I've partnered with. So if I change that tool, got to tell them. If I change remote access, TrueGrid. We implemented Threat Locker. I mean, they're now getting used to seeing the Threat Locker, pop up when they try to install something. That would change if I had to do that. So I just realized how many things I would have to tell the customers about, retrain the customers. And that's an added cost.
Yeah.
And mainly the cost is time, but it's cost.
Yes. We switched security awareness training vendors, and I've looked at other vendors just because of the fact that I could consolidate. A couple of the other vendors I use also do security awareness training as part of their platform. I don't want to switch. The cost difference isn't enough for me to change that because everybody's used to it now. But when we switched, I had people asking, "Hey, what happened?" And we let them know ahead of time, "Hey, we're going to switch this. This is what's going to happen. It's going to look different. It's going to come from here." But I still had questions. The back end security, the stuff they don't see, is great. Threat Locker is in your face, and that was a fun one just because of the fact that we would tell them, "Hey, if you click on the wrong thing, we're going to shut it down." And they're like, "Oh yeah, that sounds cool." And then it happens, and all of a sudden they're on the phone going, "What is going on here?"
Right. Because they're thinking, well, it's not going to affect me.
Yep. It's like, why are you trying to install this?
Yeah.
Why are you on the phone with Microsoft support trying to install a remote control tool?
Yeah. See how much time we have here. So here's a question I have for you. We've seen a lot of platforms come up. I've had them on the show. Synchro, SuperOps. There's a lot of all-in-one tools, RMM, PSA, and then they have their add-ons and stuff. You've talked about your tools, and it doesn't sound like you've gone or ever looked at any of these all-in-ones. But for smaller MSPs, the all-in-one tool seems like a cost-saving way to start. Did you ever consider that? And would you ever want to have an all-in-one solution?
I never have. When we went to ConnectWise in 2009, we had been doing everything in Great Plains Dynamics, or whatever they called it. We've been a Microsoft partner forever, so they gave us licenses, and we kind of rolled our own PSA out of Great Plains. And then we I don't even remember how we got remote access. I don't think we really did, unless we were using VNC back then. So ConnectWise was a kind of a game changer as far as billing, because we were billing out of QuickBooks Desktop, using Great Plains to handle ticketing, and we had the email connector, so it would create tickets. And then we went to our first IT Nation in 2010, and that's where I discovered LabTech. So in early 2011, we bought into LabTech, and all of a sudden everything was different, because now we had remote agents and all this other fun stuff. If we would have known about the all-in-ones back then, and I don't even know if they existed back in 2009, 2010, 2011. I probably would have dug into that pretty heavily, because we had two different tools. We had two different systems. I mean, at one point we had our own Screen Connect server on-prem. We were also running Exchange on-prem. So as things have progressed, we moved all of our stuff to 365. I got rid of 5 servers when 365 got doable. When we moved to Continuum, we got rid of our LabTech server. Just I'm kind of a, do I have to deal with this kind of stuff? Can I put it in the cloud, or do I need to have control of it kind of person? I think the all-in-one would have been very attractive. I talked to a friend this morning who was on Synchro, and sounds great. I've never seen one, and I probably should have looked. I was thinking I probably should have checked out SuperOps before we moved to Halo, but Halo did stuff that I really wanted to do, so I kind of went, nah, I'm going to go.
Yeah. So I mentioned I'm with Enable,
Mm-hmm.
not technically an all-in-one, because it does have a pseudo PSA, I'm going to call it, with their MSP manager.
Mm-hmm.
I went to look at it, didn't like it, so I didn't implement it. When I looked at Synchro a few years ago, and to be honest, there were some things I liked about it, some things I didn't like. But what really prevented me from making a switch was the fact of all the things I would have to replace outside of Synchro. So to me, that was the big thing. So that once I did a full analysis there, because I did the price analysis, I decided I can't look at an all-in-one solution unless it has everything already there. The closest that came to that was the Kaseya 365 platform, but I'm not going down that road. And it's not for the reasons everybody thinks. There's some stuff there I had to get. So I was a big Datto fan. Had a lot of Datto stuff. But when the prices kept going up and up and up after Kaseya purchased it, my customers like, we can't pay this. I mean, I had law firms paying. I had one firm that was paying over $2,000 a month for their data storage.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, we've got to be able to do this cheaper. Now, there are some places, yes, $2,000 a month is probably no big deal for having, backup and disaster recovery for their purpose. But for a lot of my law firms, as long as we can get them back up in a day or two, that was fine for them. It didn't need to be full disaster recovery.
Right.
A lot of stuff is moving to the cloud. So again, it was different. So I had to pull back on that. And the 365 bundle, at least the way that it was presented, I wasn't committing to 3 years. That's, now they've changed their practice. I know they do 1 year now. But there's just something about a bundle that isn't sitting well with me right now. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean it'll always be that way. There may be some things in the future that changes that. But I just the all-in-one bundles, to me, they feel entry level. In other words, a way to get started without a ton of upfront costs. I'm not entry level anymore. I'm gonna be 30 years in. So I don't need entry level. I like my tool. Enables a mature tool. It's security focused. Everything is tightly integrated. Now, having said that, I just finished looking at Sentinel-1, which is technically integrated into Enable, but it's not. It's a separate dashboard, and it's clunky. There's some stuff in there. So, you know what I did? I'm using ThreatLocker EDR.
And there's nothing wrong with that because they've got a great product.
It was seamless. It was easy.
Yeah.
And I'm already in the ThreatLocker ecosystem. So, yes, I did name drop people. But a lot of times you guys yell at me because I don't, but this is what I'm doing. So just to give you guys an idea, the hidden cost of changing your stack, you can't always put a cost on it, but you can put, a time factor on it. You can put an ease of use factor on it. You can put a client disruption, factor on it. These are all things to think about. And now I'm at the point where I've got my core stack. Enable, ThreatLocker, and I didn't even mention LionGuard.
Yeah.
Those are the big three. So anything that I look to add on needs to be able to integrate somewhere in there. That it's just simply something I can add on to my stack and not rip something out. So that's how I evaluate now.
That's it. There are tools. I am going to get rid of a couple tools. Because we have overlap and I can do automation with one of them that I can't do with the other. There's an API for one of them that will allow me to integrate it with the automation system we use.
Yeah.
So The problem is now I have to get things in place for that. But as far as everything else goes, I don't want to switch. We have our infrastructure vendor, we have our PSA, our RMM. Ninja has a ticketing system now that I've never looked at, but it's got documentation and ticketing built into it, which I think is interesting. I've heard that it's not great, but for somebody starting out, there you go. Now you've got another super ops or whatever. Um, I don't, if I can help it, I don't want to switch again. Things
Yeah.
work.
And that's where I've always been. If it works, don't break it.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
Let me grab my notes here and see what else I was going to talk about. Because again, the hidden cost, that's always the consideration. We've hit most of these stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking of the one where you've got the cheap tool switch you've ever seen, the most expensive cheap tool switch. I have a tool that costs me $100 a month. And I have another tool that does kind of the same thing that costs me $300 a month. The $100 a month tool has the API and will allow me to integrate it into the system tighter. The $300 a month tool, it'll create tickets, and like the $100 a month tool, it integrates into Halo. I can do more with the $100 a month tool. The problem is now we have to go through and set up the $100 a month tool to do all of the stuff that the $300 a month tool is doing. So all of a sudden, we're going to have a whole bunch of time to configure this thing. And probably by the time we get rid of the $300 a month tool, we're going to spend more this year than we would have if we just stayed on it. But in the future, going forward, we'll be able to tie that into our automation system and trigger things off of it and stuff that I can't do with the other tool. So do I put the money into it and get it tighter, tightly integrated and everything, and then use it for automation? Yeah. I mean, down the road, I know I'm going to spend some money now, but down the road, it'll be better.
Yeah, so there were some free tools that I did look at back in the day that just didn't make it because they didn't scale properly. I tried to do, some Nagios stuff for, monitoring, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to pay the money, and it works. It scales. So I had to drop that. I looked at Narmada for my lifecycle management. That was a pain in the butt to set up, keep working, and all of that stuff. What else did I do? There was some other stuff in there, but the biggest thing for me was probably, so back when I thought, when I wasn't using all of Enable properly, I thought that I would have my own remote access tool through a company called RHub.
Oh, yeah.
And I had the appliance in my office, and I'm like, oh, I can set up these agents for free. I can do all this stuff. And to be honest, they were great for remote access, but nothing else. I could not integrate tools. I couldn't do scripting. It was I don't want to say it was a joke, because it wasn't, because there are great scenarios that tool worked for say organizations that wanted to do very inexpensive Zoom-like meetings,
Right.
between offices and stuff. That's a great option for that. You don't have to buy the monthly licenses for Zoom. You just buy the appliance and you could have
Yep.
meetings. So it worked out great. Not a good RMM tool. But
There are so many ways that, and I've forgotten most of this or blocked it out, depending on how you look at it. There are so many things we tried as we were growing up that I look back at now and go, why did I spend all this time? Now I know, I mean, we were young and we needed the money, I guess is the best way to put it. We built open source stuff because it was free. The problem with open source being free, and don't get me wrong, I love open source software, but I could spend a week setting something up when I could buy something from a vendor and have it work in that afternoon. and I'm sure things are different now before anybody sends me hate mail.
Right.
It's different now. I haven't dug into that kind of stuff since before 2011.
Interesting. All right, folks, I'm going to have the link to the article that I referenced earlier, because I want to make sure people look at this chart that they have called the hidden costs of switching vendors. And for a small MSP of 500 to 1,000 endpoints, and you heard the cost that I threw out earlier, my cost is actually lower than what this article points to. 500 to 1,000 endpoints, the total switching cost, when you consider migration costs, staff training, downtime, lost revenue, is a range of $33,000 to $52,000. It's just mind-boggling in terms of that. So, something to look at, something to think about. Hopefully, Tom and I gave you some something to chew on, I guess. That's the best way to look at it. And hopefully, if you're a vendor and you're listening to this show and you wonder why Uncle Marv always, pushes off vendors talk, now you know why. I mean, what I have works. And unless it's really going to make a significant change, I'm probably not going to do it. Unless it integrates with my current stack, I'm probably not going to do it. And that's not to say that the tools out there are bad, but I got to do what's right for me. I got to do what's best for my clients. And I think that's just how we need to look at things.
Mm-hmm. I feel bad at the shows because I want to be friendly and talk to all the vendors, and I'm almost to the point where I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody anymore because I don't want to lead them on.
Right.
But I mean, there are some cool things out there that I look at and kind of go, should we do this? And most of the time it's no, everything's working. I don't want to mess with it if it's working.
So I'm going to say this. I'm going to go ahead. I mean, I want to get this out for two reasons. One, because I've had this conversation at the show with the vendors. And two, my 1,000th show is coming up Sunday, April 26th, 4 p.m. Eastern. And I want to make sure I don't get asked this question, because it is a question that I get asked behind the scenes all the time. CyberFox versus ThreatLocker. So I have made comments that CyberFox probably hates me. And I don't know that that's true or not, but I just know that 3 years ago when I was looking to do privilege access, elevation, CyberFox is who I went to because I knew the program Auto Elevate, and CyberFox had purchased them. My sole intention when I contacted them was to purchase Auto Elevate. But I did due diligence by looking at some other platforms because I always want to make the best choice I could. I ended up going with ThreatLocker. Not because ThreatLocker was better at the auto elevation, but because ThreatLocker had some other things in their toolbox that I had not thought about when it comes to zero trust. And I was moving towards a security-focused zero trust idea, and they offered all of that stuff. Now, they've also since added EDR, they've added 360. I mean, they've done a whole bunch of stuff. But at the time, I was torn because it was, whatever the price was for CyberFox and whatever the price was for ThreatLocker, I knew ThreatLocker was going to be more. But it offered more for my clients, and I made that decision. And I have gotten the evil eye many times at the ThreatLocker boost from the girls. But I've talked to them. I said, look, it's not about your platform. If I had to go Auto Elevate versus ThreatLocker just for privileged access, CyberFox is probably the easiest and cheapest just for that.
Yep.
So CyberFox, I love you. Come back on the show. But I just want to get that out there so you can stop asking me what's going on there.
Yep. We use ThreatLocker. We use Huntress for EDR or MDR, what do you want to call it, SIEM, SOC, whatever. And I've had conversations with ThreatLocker about moving over to their EDR. I've also looked at Huntress for security awareness training, and I think does ThreatLocker do that now too, something like that. But there's all this stuff I could combine, and then I look at what we're doing and whether the costs would be different or whether it's even worth it to move everything over. And I'm kind of, we're back at the everything works. I will research, but I've gotten to the point in my career where I'm going to think about this for 6 months. It's going to sit in the back of my head and I'm going to think about it. At some point, 6 months from now, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to go through all of the differences and benefits and costs, and then I'll make a decision. I try to push that off till like September or October every year now, because otherwise it's just a bombardment from vendors calling up and going, hey, I'll look at it in September, October, and then we'll decide whether I want to do anything. But everything works.
Yeah.
I love when we first implemented ThreatLocker, we shut down so many problems. I had one of my clients who's been with us 15 plus years called me up and said, you've stopped 3 different people from installing software they shouldn't be installing this week. And that was in the first month. I'm like, that's why we did it. It's lowered our ticket count. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Is it? Well, Tom, we went a little longer than we thought. Thank you for taking time out of your day to do this. And
thanks for having me.
And
always a pleasure.
Well, yes, it is. And you stayed on track. No ADD squirrel chasing.
I'm getting better. I'm getting much better. I had my coffee. I'm working on that.
All right. Well, folks, that is it for today. Again, the hidden costs of Stack. Now, we didn't go, bullet point by bullet point, but I think you've heard everything that we wanted to talk about in terms of the hidden cost, in terms of your time, training of staff, educating clients, migration, data ownership. Can you move everything? Think about all of those things. And does it integrate well with your rest of your stack? Those are all things to consider. That's going to do it, folks. We'll be back with more episodes this week on the IT Business Podcast. And if you found this conversation enlightening and you have not subscribed to the show, I encourage you to do that. Head over to itbusinesspodcast.com, find your favorite podcatcher and subscribe. You can also find past episodes, the show notes, ways to connect. And until next time, holla.